You're listening to Stellar Success, Leveling Up for Medical Pros with Dr. Tudor Francu. Join us as we explore how medical professionals can achieve stellar success in all areas of life. It's time to level up.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Tudor Francu with Stellar Success Podcast, and I have the honor of having here today with me Dr. Nguyen. How are you?
I'm doing amazing, Dr. Tudor. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great. Thank you. I'm really excited to have you on my podcast because, we've known each other for a few years now, and I think you and your husband has been one of my mentors, so to speak, in different aspects of being successful. So I want to kind of dissect with you a little bit what it means for you, in your profession, in your personal life, socially, to be successful and what success means to you in general.
Yeah, it's a great question. And thank you, Dr. Tudor. The integration of our professional and personal as one, right? We really prioritize the quality of living, right? And so, especially as healthcare professionals, and sometimes being very busy. And so, we want to make sure that we, as we are today, we're doing it with the right vision and bigger mission and mindset, and not just always work, 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 work. And so for us, it integrates a holistic view of, spending quality time with family and friends. And when you talk about, faith and family and philanthropy and the fulfillment and finances and career, it's all one big life, right? And so everything that we do and everything that we say yes to into our success formula, are we actually spending time with quality people doing quality work that moves the needle in the direction we want to go? And so
That's a
that's
good point.
yeah, and that's something that, Jaime and I, being both life partners of 19 years, but then also business partners and being parents, it's very important that we do this, that we're enjoying the process. We always talk about enjoying the journey, right?
Yeah,
And so Les Brown has the saying, to live like you're dying, right? To live the way that if today was my last day, that I would have no regrets. That to me is living a successful life.
I love that quote, actually. That's awesome. That's an impressive goal to have. I want to give the listeners a little bit of introspection and of what you do, how you came up to do what you're doing right now, and just tell us a little bit about your story.
Right. Jaime and I, very humble background. I was born in the refugee camp in the Philippines. I came to the US by 8.5. Jaime came here when he was 5 from Mexico. And so going to school, we're first generation doctors in our family. And we're both optometrists, met in school. He was my lab partner. And when we graduated, we were $350,000 in student loan debt.
Oh my God.
And so, and because when we came out, we had these big dreams, but financially we were in the big negative.
Yeah.
We were in Houston, but I moved to Dallas. That's where his family grew up. And so after we graduated, came here, and, we worked for another doctor for about 4.5 years before we purchased our first practice. And then a few years later, bought our second practice. And so we've been practicing for 19 years. We have 2 really successful eye care practices, but back then we were still trading a lot of time for money, working 6 days a week, sometimes picking up extra relief work, with the goal of, eventually being able to tie up and free up some more time. But when Athena was born, and that was 2014, that was really the game changer for us to explore other options of how can we work smarter to now put our money to work and buy back some of that time and be able to travel while we're young, be able to spend quality time as parents and be there for her milestones and have flexibility, right? And that's where we really started our real estate investing journey and learning different avenues and how we can better leverage our income from our practices, hire associates, and leverage that money to be able to grow elsewhere. And that's been a really big journey because we bought land, we built from ground up. We did a lot of things the hard way, and we did it in Belize to begin with. When we transitioned into apartment communities and doing a model where we can invest alongside other partners and other investors, that was really the biggest game changer for us
Yeah,
because
interesting.
it wasn't us trying to do all the work, taking all the risk. We didn't have the expertise at the beginning. And so that was really the model that really has helped us catapult our time freedom and financial freedom journey a lot faster.
Yeah, that's very interesting as a principle, because we're our audience right now are medical professionals who are maybe very successful in their profession, and they know what they're doing, they're trained how they do it. But there's often talks about, how do we build this passive income streams in our lives, and how do we free our time, or, be able to not practice medicine if you want that option, and have that financial stability later in life. So I'm curious, in your case, what, we often wonder, how do we start? What makes someone start in this journey? Because it's something clicks at some point. You read a lot, you educate yourself a lot, but until you take action, nothing happens. What was the moment for you start taking action?
Yeah, it was really interesting because Jaime explored and really talked about real estate investing. And, there was this, by nature, I used to be very closed-minded, very extra conservative, shy. Right. And so going into these conferences and learning the education part, it's like the second phase is like you do all the medical training and the medical education, and now it's the investing. It's like starting all over and learning all the pros and cons and getting out there and seeing who are the successful people in these different spaces and talking to them and learning. Right. But it is what pulled what pushed us over. Aside from just the education, we spent about a year just like educating, right? But
Hmm.
essentially we had to pull the trigger, and I was like,
Right.
nothing's going to happen with only talking and building relationships and education unless we actually put our money to work and
Yeah.
take action. And that was the time where I was like, okay, we're just gonna have to move forward. If we really spent this time, we've invested our time and money to go educate, get to know the people who are doing this. Like now we just have to put our money to work, right? And it was just a decision that Jaime and I were committed to doing. Our goal was really knowing that I wanted to spend more time with Athena, that, we started putting our money to work, and we started putting, we did 8 passive investment deals.
Oh, so you started as a passive investor, basically.
Started at 8.
Yeah.
We started as a passive investor in 8 different projects, and really seeing and understanding and seeing the money come back. That was like
Yeah,
an opener. I'm like, oh, this really works.
exactly.
You
That's
know,
very interesting. And after that, once you realize that some good money are coming back from that, you became a taking action on the active side, correct?
correct. And then we
Yeah.
transitioned over to the active side once we really, because that gave us an opportunity to now be able to transition and spend more time on that side. And even though it's still work, right? Being a general partner is by no means just sitting doing nothing, but
Right.
it's certain phases. If there's an active project, it's always building relationships, but it's different because if Athena is sleeping when she's a younger, right? I can pick up the phone, or I can make the calls or do meetings, and it's more flexible. When I was practicing, I would leave my house by 7:40 in the morning. I would get home by 6:40 in the evening. And so the bulk of my day is actually physically seeing patients and then doing the admin. So it's a very different type of scheduling and flexibility. And once I transitioned over the active side, I cut down my hours, and I see, patients 1 day a week as optional, right?
Hmm.
able to slowly transition from 6 days a week down to 4 days a week, down to 3 days a week, to 2 days a week, now to 1 day a week, right? But that allowed me the vehicle to choose. I can practice as much as I want, or I can focus more on this side, and that was the reason I pivoted.
That's very interesting, and it's very helpful for someone to understand that we all have 24 hours in a day. And a lot of questions that I receive from friends, from colleagues, from investors are, when do you have time to do all these things? And I try to explain to people that it's a matter of priorities, of how you organize your life and what your actually goals are. And like you said, you made a conscious decision with your husband to get into real estate and start your making money work for you instead of you working for the money all the time. And that's what made the decision an action. And it's probably very helpful for someone who listens to this podcast to understand that by having this kind of decisions and actions, you cannot do them without being very rigorous with your time and having certain set of skills and certain sort of habits that you do and routines every day to make you organized and disciplined. In your case, in your family, what are those skills and habits and routines that you practice every day to get you where you want?
That's a big part, coinciding in 2014 and transitioning into the real estate space, pushing out of my comfort zone. I started doing a lot of self-development and a lot of personal development. And Jaime and I have our own different strategies. But what we incorporate, initially we'll leave out and do these conferences, right? But they don't sustain. And so incorporating the daily habits once you get off from the high and all the motivation, so making sure that we constantly are subconsciously programming our minds with positive things. We had cut out news. We stopped watching news, cut out a lot of the negative toxicity things, and even circling around people who were elevating us in the mindset and where we are, where we wanted to be. Right. And changing the environment and what we allowed in and who we were around was super important. Meditation, breath work, right? Eating healthy, obviously, all the things that incorporate, because the physical, the mental, the emotional, it all is tied together, right? And so when I started pushing out of my comfort zone, learning how to speak was something that was completely out of my wheelhouse. But I knew there was a bigger mission. And a big part of what Jaime and I love to do is travel the world and do philanthropy work, right? And I said, how can we integrate all the things that we've worked so hard for, right? And it required us to keep improving our own inner environment, our limiting beliefs, right? And
Yeah,
so
it's very important, to kind of restrict your exposure to what you don't like. There's so many things in this world, right, that can suck your time up or, waste your time or, get you mad or whatever happens in the world at any point, and, kind of, stay away from those things. And you mentioned, you know, something very important, surrounding yourself with the right people. And I want to know, in your opinion, what are the qualities of people that you want to surround yourself with?
yeah, the qualities for me are just alignment and value, right? I really want it to be about people, right?
Mhm.
People first, in whatever it is, like building just authentic relationships, right? Someone who has a vision and a mission bigger than just themselves, too, right? And not just talking about it, but living it. And so those are people. And for me, I see everybody on an equal playing field. And so if someone was of high caliber, bunch of accolades and titles, but they were treating, if we had lunch or dinner and they didn't treat the staff or waitress or whatnot appropriately or disrespectful, that would be someone I don't want in my circle, right? And so
That's
that's
so important.
so important.
Yes.
So someone who doesn't have a facade, right? We want somebody who's just integrity is super important for us. You know, having good values that are in alignment with us. And then also having a positive mindset and who people who are truly grateful. There's always something that we can be grateful for.
That's
Right?
true.
And so perspective is super, super critical. It could be the exact same thing that we're all going through, and one person can view it totally different than
Yeah.
the right. And that energy really influences the next people in your circle. And
Yes.
so for me, that gut feeling, the intuition, the energy, how does that person just make me feel being around them is super important.
Awesome. Awesome. I love that. Um, I want to go back to being a successful person. And, you guys run a business, you guys run more businesses like real estate businesses, and you just run your life business in general. So what is something that you want to people to know in terms of like daily routines that it's most important for you to achieve what you want?
You know, there's a blueprint, right? And for us, if you don't know where you're going and you're just on autopilot and it's the same routine of just go to work, go home, and you're on this rigid schedule without a bigger why, the bigger way, your life goals, not your immediate ones, but your life goals, right? And then kind of bring it down to a minutia. I'm both structured and non-structured in the sense that, yes, we do overall planning, which I think is important. So
Hmm.
if you have a partner or whatever, to put the blue rocks into your calendar, to have an idea of what things look like for you and plan it down. The more that you can visualize, write out in detail what it is you really want, what you want, not for somebody else, not to impress anyone else, not to make the accolades just look good, but what at the core do you really want? And the more clear you are about that, and the more you have things written down, like I write everything down. Jaime makes fun of me. I write everything on napkins, and then everything goes on my calendar as big rocks. And then I'm adaptable, and that's key is you're flexible to make
Yeah.
some pivots, right? But I think you have to have from a macro down to a micro. Um, I prioritize in my day when I wake up, what are the top 3 things I truly want to prioritize today so that
Very
I don't get
interesting.
overwhelmed, right? And so I do self-care where I prioritize, it's my time, I get myself ready and my energy flowing. And then I go down okay, what are the things I really want to prioritize? And every day is going to be a little bit different because, maybe I'm traveling and my priority is just to be present. And
Yeah.
the biggest thing for me is like, I just want to be present. If I'm working with my patients, I want to be present with my patients. If I'm working with my investors, I want to be patient there. If I'm with my family, I want to make sure my energy is there, right? And so you allocate and prioritize where you want your time and energy to be because you cannot be everything and everyone all the time.
Yeah. No,
Right.
you said something very important. You said something that many people should do, like, have a clear vision of your calendar over a longer period of time ahead of you, because that gives you a perspective of your goals. And, like Itzar would say, just put your weeks or days of the calendar in front of you for the year to come and look at what actual time do you have, because it's not that much time. And when you look at the year of calendar, you'll say easily that you can plan ahead a year, ahead of you. That's very important, and like, I read a quote somewhere that says, if your goals don't scare you, they're not big enough.
That's right.
And I love that because, like you said, you need to prioritize and see the vision that you have for your life. and somehow you're going to get there. Maybe you're not going to get exactly there, but you're going to get very close to it. And that's a bigger step than you thought you're going to do it in the first place.
Absolutely. And
Yeah,
the
that's
reality of it is not linear, right? It's never always linear and perfect. And that's the reality of it. We go up
yeah,
and we go down, we backtrack a bit, we move forward, right? But we have to have the bigger vision to keep us, because when you are down in the dumps and when you want to give up, or you feel like you're at a low point, that bigger why is what keeps you motivated to move forward, pick yourself back up and like, okay, let's keep moving forward.
exactly. Speaking of, um, you can be successful without having failures, and a lot of us don't like to talk about our failures, but that's, to me, that's an essential part of someone who is successful. Because, like, they always say the definition of success is like how you deal with failures, and you can't be successful without failures. In your case, would was something in your life that you can remember or give us an example of something that didn't necessarily work out, or happened the way you wanted, that made you rethink and push forward even bigger?
I've had lots of failures, but
That's why you're so successful.
you know, people say if you didn't have enough failures, failure is part of the success formula, right? But
Yeah.
failures, you don't consider failures, they're learning lessons, right? They're lessons
Yes.
that strengthen us. But I remember during our real estate transitioning to be general partners and us chasing and doing all these underwriting and deals, and we got a property under contract. It was $4 million, 56 units. We were so excited. It was going to be our first co-GP deal that we were leading. And it was right around COVID. And interest rates and everything happening, it didn't make sense anymore. I put hard money in. And our mentor advised us to not go through with it. So we stopped on that. And then we lost our earnest money because it was already hard. And then post few months after that, they came back to us. So we spent 9 months on
Wow.
one deal. And it was really defeating because I had passively invested. I was ready to go be on the active side. I didn't realize that how much work was involved. I mean, we were back and forth so many times in the minutia of it, but it was just bad timing, right? And then
Yeah.
going back to it, and then so it all in all, I wound up losing money on my very first deal as a general partner. And
Yeah.
that was devastating to me because I was like, oh my God, I'm a failure. I spent all this time investing and building all this. And did I make the right decision? Right. And so you're at that point. And then Jaime said, it's okay. Like that it's part of the learning process. But
Yes.
that failure really opened the door for us to be able to share that vulnerability with the intimate group of people that we had. And then someone allowed us to partner with them. And from that 56 unit deal, we went to a 243 unit deal, much better asset, much better location, and it is rock and rolling, right? So had we said yes to that deal, we wouldn't have had the opportunity a month later for the better deal. And that was the opener for us to go back to back to back,
Yeah.
And so in hindsight, we're like, did I fail? Oh, absolutely. Did I almost give up?
Yes. And you got back up basically and keep going, right? You didn't quit. And that's another trait of somebody, who's successful like you, because, these things are going to happen. And any investment, you're going to lose something. That I don't hear of anybody having an investment that keeps being so successful all the time. At some point, you're going to lose some money, but that doesn't mean you have to quit. Um, it's very interesting what you've been through, and as part of your routine, and as being a successful person, I'm sure you have a lot of other aspects of your successful life. Like, how do you deal with being healthy? How does your nutrition looks like? What kind of books do you read? What kind of podcasts do you listen to? That's all part of who you are as a person.
Yeah, absolutely. We do an anti-inflammatory type diet. We focus on gut health. We do
Hmm.
a lot of just whole dense food, right? Where we don't eat a bunch of processed foods. Even with our protein, Jaime special orders all our protein in. And so he doesn't want antibiotics in our chicken and hormones and stuff like that. And so even with like our vegetables, they're organic, water, the water. And we don't drink a bunch of like added sugars in anything, right? And so
Yeah.
it's as whole of the food as we can have, and that's a big component of it. Nutrition is big part, supplements, making sure we have just the right supplements and moving, some sort of for exercise, whether it's weightlifting, whether we're just walking together. And it's a social thing. We bring our daughter with us, we have our
Hmm.
little dog with us, we do our daily walks, right? And then we alternate. And so whether I dance with my daughter and just put on something fun, and it hits two stones in one. We're having fun together, quality family time. I'm moving, she's moving, right? And so
That's awesome.
those are some things. Now, what we listen to and what we read, like I listen to, and I rotate between Les Brown, Jim Rohn, Dr. Wayne Dyer. I listen to Ed Milet. And so they're kind of different types like Jay Shetty. And so those are the type of things I like to listen to.
Yeah, a lot of personal development.
A lot of personal development
Yes.
type. I do listen to podcasts that are business related as well.
Hmm.
But I like to go to retreats, which are immersion retreats, meaning it's time for me to not have anybody else, but working on just the inner me, right? And I like to have those, whether it's 4 or 5 days, and be completely untied to social media, to my email, to my work, and just be fully immersed in me and really reassessing and reflecting where I am and what else I need to work on to become even the next level, better version of me. And so we do those, we do those frequently.
That's
That helps
awesome.
a lot, right? Books, I mean, we read a wide variety of books, depending on what we're in the mood for. So we have like a whole stack of books, and there's so many, I don't know. It's
Yeah.
things, Dr. Wayne Dyer books. We read, one of my favorite ones, which I read way back when, it's just Man's Search for Meaning. It just gives you perspective, right? But Jaime reads,
Awesome.
Jaime reads a lot of business and personal development and kind of inspirational type books.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Erin Lecter, I like a lot of her books.
Hmm. Hmm.
What
Very
else?
nice. Very nice. Yeah,
Breath,
it,
breath work, I think, is really important.
yeah, yeah, that also is something that not a lot of people are doing, and it's very important. It's amazing how the breath work can balance your body, from inside out, and get rid of anxiety and kind of, get out your parasympathetic nervous system out more than some sympathetic reactions. But yeah, we should all do it more.
And it's everyday conscious effort, like, and I do it before and in the morning, during the day, in the evening. And Jaime does, like, he is into biohacking, longevity, like he goes to the extreme. I don't do the stuff
Yes.
he does, but he does all the other stuff that's with biohacking and
Yeah,
like,
I'm personally into biohacking too. So I remember talking to him a couple of years back, and we were changing some secrets, so to
good,
speak.
yeah.
So I want to kind of, follow up on your goals and your business adventures. What is something that you're excited about right now? Any projects coming up? Any big goals that you're thinking about? How does that look?
Yeah, right. Now I'm doing a lot of the speaking, right? I do go to a lot of kind of coordinating the philanthropy arm with the real estate arm. And so
Mhm.
I've been able to, be able to speak at conferences and then be able to help raise for causes. And just from this past year, we've been able to help raise probably over $400,000 towards child trafficking. And that's a
Wow.
big arm. And then another one that we were really excited about is to partner with one of our own patients, who's also a big athlete, and she's big into the philanthropy work. And her name is Nancy Lieberman, but she does a lot of building basketball courts, and we go and speak to the underserved community and the kids. And where Jaime used to grow up was in Irving. And so to be able to go back to the areas where he was going to school and being able to talk to kids where he
Mhm.
grew up and his humble beginnings and share those stories, and to be able to, like, how do we utilize our network of all our business acumen to be able to collaborate on a bigger mission? And that's what we've been working on and focusing our energy. And that's been super, super exciting. So yes, we're growing our businesses, but on the bigger token, we're also fulfilling our hearts, right? And so that's,
The
yeah.
secret of living is giving, right? Like Tony Robbins would say. That's very impressive. I'm really impressed of what your goals are and how you go about it. I really appreciate you coming on, Dr. Wen, and get you guys together. What would you say to someone who wants to follow in your footsteps? What kind of advice or piece of nugget you would give?
Well, piece of nugget number one, I don't want anybody to follow my footsteps. I would really want to, each person, I would encourage them to look within their own, right? And look deep, deep down inside of what they would really want, right? And maybe, yes, utilize some of the resources that are common sources for inspiration. And those are things that are very easily accessible,
Mhm.
right? But to find and pencil out your journey, because, Les Brown always says, you have greatness within you.
Yep.
Don't look at somebody else's path, no comparison. Your path, what makes you happy, and intrinsically, until you find a self-discover and deeper layer of what it is and who you want to become, then follow that and just take one step at a time, right? But dream big, like you said, these moonshots and big dreams, write it out. I'm a big believer in the power of manifestations, right?
Mhm.
Tony Robbins always says, right? Success leaves clues. And so you study the habits and maybe some of the resources that somebody who's living maybe the life you want to live. But I wouldn't say mirror anybody. We're all unique. We all have different reasons of what triggers us and what creates passion and ignites our hearts. So your job is to figure out what that is.
That's awesome advice. I love that. If someone wants to get in touch with you and find out more of what you're doing and how is your business going, can they contact you?
They can get on our website. Look, I'm on social media as well. I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook. HOA, last name NGUYEN. Our website is be the one and then the number 23.com. And so
Awesome.
you just remember, you be the one. You can be the one to break into the change that you want to see, right?
That's awesome to end the podcast on. You be the change. Thank you so much, Dr. Wen, and I hope to circle back maybe later in the year and see how your goals are doing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on.
Sure.
That's a wrap on Stellar Success, Leveling Up for Medical Pros with Dr. Tudor Francu. Interested in joining us? Go to stellarsuccesspodcast.com/guest to apply. Stay stellar and level up.